you see them on the Sunday shows by the media as, critical to democracy. And by the way, they're going to get right back in too, because they were expelled. 2 out of 3 were expelled. They're going to get put right back in there by the voters like this week. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I remember very well in the weeks and months after January 6th that the demands that a whole variety of members of Congress who had nothing to do, even arguably, with the January 6th riots, such as Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, anybody basically who wanted a congressional examination of that election, be expelled. They were demanding expel Josh Hawley, just expel Ted Cruz, expel these dozens of House members, and now suddenly expelling elected members of Congress for disrupting congressional procedures, not for positions they've taken as some sort of fascist assault on democracy. Exactly what people like AOC were demanding not all that long ago. I think the bigger and more important point, though, Megyn, is this Nashville shooting has been erased from memory, even though it happened very recently, because it's such an inconvenient narrative, given that the shooter was not just someone who was trans, but very possibly acted on behalf of this radical ideology. And amazingly, they won't show us the manifesto, even though we always see the manifesto when they can link it to the right. And we retain counsel in Nashville to try and obtain that manifesto, because of course it's journalistically in the public interest. So that's why Kamala Harris goes there and pretends there are no victims, because they want to forget about that shooting completely, except to the extent they can exploit it for gun control issues.
That's exactly right. And now what we're seeing is this message that, once again, it's Jim Crow 2.0. I mean, how many times have we heard that? It's like they're excited on the left because they can turn what was the targeting of a Christian school and little 9-year-olds by a trans person into Black Lives Matter. You threw out the 2 black guys instead of the white woman. And by the way, her expulsion only failed by 1 vote, and she did not grab a bullhorn and take it out into the well, and she did not lead the protests of the people up in the balcony. So there was a distinction, and she argued those distinctions on her own behalf and through her representatives in distinguishing her own behavior from that of the 2 black men, only to then be saved. And then when she was saved and the black men were kicked out, she turned around and said, racism. It's like, well, you're the one who distinguished your behavior. Okay, but the left is loving the shift to, it's not about the dead Christian children. It's not about the trans person who committed the murders or the buried manifesto. It is about the expulsion of the 2 black people who were fighting for democracy.
Yeah, first of all, one of the main weapon of the Democratic Party, kind of the establishment wing that leads it, is to depict anyone and everyone who opposes them and their views of being bigoted in some way. It's an automatic reflex. It probably had its roots, or at least its kind of newer iteration, back in the 2016 election, when, I don't know if you recall, but the main tactic of Hillary Clinton's defenders against Bernie Sanders supporters who were trying to kind of challenge the establishment wing of the party was to claim they were all misogynists. That was the only possible reason you might be opposed to Hillary Clinton, somebody with a long line of ideological positions and all kinds of corrupt behavior in public life. It had to only be misogyny. And it worked. They did it through the general election where it didn't work, but that became their main tactic. So they're incapable of ever engaging in any kind of political debate without immediately insisting that anyone who's on the other side, by virtue of being on the other side of them, is automatically a racist or a misogynist or a homophobe or transphobe or whatever. That's why they're so eager to destroy Clarence Thomas, because he's kind of a living, breathing testament to the lie of that narrative. But that's the only political debate and the only framework in which they're comfortable. And so somehow a shooting by what appeared to be somebody motivated by, at least in part, radical theories of gender ideology and killed Christian children in the name of that ideology, somehow that has been turned around so that whoever is concerned about that component of the story is now back to being a 1960s Jim Crow racist. And of course, it wouldn't work without the media's cooperation. That's how they frame everything in partnership with their partisan allies.
Yes, you see Kamala Harris goes there to meet with, again, the lawmakers, the ousted lawmakers, not the victims. And for the first time in her vice presidency, she was truly animated. You could tell this is what she actually cares about. The race narrative, yes, something I can glom onto, I can really get behind. That's been injected. That actually fires me up. And listen to her messaging. Listen to this. This is SOT 3.
It wasn't about the 3 of these leaders. It was about who they were representing. It's about whose voices they were channeling. Understand that. And is that not what a democracy allows? A democracy says you don't silence the people. You do not stifle the people. You don't turn off their microphones when they are speaking about the importance of life and liberty.
Okay, so she finally cares about something. She's finally managed to have an articulate moment because race and divisive insertion of it where it doesn't belong, that's what fires her up. But the irony, Glenn, the irony of her saying, in a democracy, you don't silence people, you don't take away their microphones. Tell it to the disinformation dozen, right? Tell it to Trump, who you impeached twice because you didn't want the people to be able to vote for him a second time. Tell it to the Twitter files reporting on how many private citizens have been stifled and not been able to offer their opinions online. Tell it to Facebook that shut down discussions that went against the administration's narrative when it came to COVID and so on. Tell it to the people who were on the banned lists after January 6th who suddenly couldn't get books published or hired or do business at banks because they were affiliated with Donald Trump. This is an absurd statement to come out of her mouth. What a lie that she believes that.
Okay, she didn't believe any of that. Let's remember the only good moment of her ill-fated presidential campaign. Remember, she dropped out before the first vote was cast. That's what a complete abject failure it was when she accused Joe Biden of being a racist because he had opposed busing and desegregation of schools. And she had that moment in that debate where she said, that little girl was me, Joe, really strongly implying that he was a racist. She shut up in the polls very temporarily. And then if she really believed that Joe Biden was animated by racist sentiments, depicting him as this Jim Crow supporter of segregation, which is what she said, it's amazing that, then she turned around less than a year later and embraced him and heralded him as this man of great character when just a year earlier she was claiming he hated Black people. That shows you how cynical this game is. And on top of that, the bigger issue is exactly the one that you raised, which is suddenly now the Democratic Party is the party that safeguards the voices of dissent and the right to protest. Like when all those people were going to protest COVID lockdowns at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and they were told they should be arrested and were criminals and were risking grandma's life because they wanted to go protest. And then suddenly when they had a protest they liked after George Floyd's death, they demanded everybody go protest, or exactly they've imposed a censorship regime on this country using not just their power over big tech, but also the law. Remember, they tried characterizing parents at school board meetings, expressing concerns about the curriculum their children were being taught as people engaged in RICO violations or terrorism.
Domestic
the Democratic
terrorists.
Party is about nothing other than criminalizing dissent and protest. Everything she just said there is so cynical and so disingenuous, it's hard to know where to start.
Now that it's spring, oh, it's so nice to have the warmer temperatures, isn't it? Thank God they're finally here. It is time to get outside and enjoy your backyard. But does your backyard need a makeover? Start with the perfect centerpiece, a Michael Phelps Swim Spa by Master Spas. A Michael Phelps Swim Spa can transform your backyard into an oasis. The swim spa is an alternative to a pool with the therapy of a hot tub. Michael Phelps Swim Spas have a water current so you can swim, do aquatic exercises, and have fun with the kids. And because it is heated, you can choose your perfect water temperature and use it all year long in any climate. Michael Phelps Swim Spas by Master Spas come in a variety of sizes to complement almost any yard, even if it's a small one. And this is not a long, intimidated project. In fact, delivery and installation can take less than 1 day once your space is ready, so don't feel intimidated. Michael Phelps Swim Spas are 100% made in the USA by Master Spas, the world's largest swim spa manufacturer. You are going to love your Michael Phelps Swim Spa by Master Spas. Go to masterspas.com, put in the promo code MK to save that $1,000 on a Michael Phelps Swim Spa or $500 on a Master Spas hot tub. That's masterspas.com, promo code MK. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.